All right, so hello everyone. I am Serena and I am the president of United Arts. Today we will be having a workshop on UX design hosted by our guest speaker, Grace Ling. So before we start, just some housekeeping things. We will have questions at the end, so please leave them in the chat and make sure that your microphone is muted so it doesn't disrupt the webinar. All right, so Grace, I'm going to turn it over to you now. And thank you again for coming and speaking today.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So for like a little context, I'm currently working as a UX design intern at Electronic Arts, and I'm also still a student. And for the context of the presentation, I will be going through my journey of how I got to UX design, if you are interested in UX design as well, and how I kind of like the problems and challenges I face and how my workday looks like and how my week looks like at EA. But I've also been involved in a lot of freelancing and startups, so as well, like on top of school. So I'll be sharing like my learnings and takeaways, how it's like working as a UX designer at a startup versus working as a UX designer at a large company. And so for a table of contents, I will kind of go through a brief introduction, my brief journey to UI UX design from an unconventional path. I'll be going through, and then later I'll be going through some of my experiences, some of the projects I've done, lessons I've learned at like small versus large companies. Later, since UX design works really closely with product management, and it's really important to have good product thinking skills. So I'll be talking about some best practices as a designer that comes to when creating like big products or like large products as in general. And then also have some resources that helped me along my way of learning design without a degree. I'm an engineering major that I never took design in school or a boot camp, but I was able to find a lot of free resources online that helped me along the way. I'll share them with you, and later I'll end with the question and answer. Throughout the chat, feel free to ask anything if something just comes up. If it's relevant to the topic, I will answer them because I have the chat open. And throughout the chat, I will also kind of just asking questions in the audience as well, just to make it more engaging as we're in the virtual space right now. And so for me, I'm currently at EA. I'm also founder and design lead of Design Buddies. So if you're interested in art and design or tech in general, you're welcome to join Design Buddies. Feel free to follow the link there. I'm also design lead of Augment and community admin of Intern Club, a really large community of interns. I'm a computer science and engineering student, and I've also studied bioengineering in the past. And I have a lot of random side hustles. I have my own art business where I table at anime conventions and have an Etsy store. So this is me at Crunchyroll Expo. How many of you guys like to watch anime or go to anime conventions? Feel free to drop your favorite anime in the chat. But I really like anime conventions just for a side hustle, and I feel like it helps in me as a UX designer being creative. I'm also from California, San Francisco Bay Area. Parents, and then I'm origin, I guess nationality is Asian because I'm like first generation American or second generation. I was born here. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love My Hero Academia and Hunter x Hunter. Those are great animes. Oh, yeah, Soul Eater is also great too. I love the soundtrack for that. Awesome. How many of you guys are also science majors or engineering majors looking to pursue a more creative path? Or are you guys in high school thinking of what to major in college? Feel free to kind of drop in the chat as well. Because I've definitely, I guess I can go to the next slide. When I was in high school, I was just like, oh, awesome. I was a bioengineering major. I exactly wanted to major in biology or bioengineering. That's awesome. I want to be a neurosurgeon before. So yeah, with that being said, growing up, that's so cool how you guys have so many diverse interests here, because I was definitely like that growing up too. Computer science, nice. Computer science, yeah, I feel like it definitely is doable. A lot of bio majors, cool. So when I was growing up, feel free to continue to chat as well. When I was growing up, I wanted to be an anime artist. I've always just drew manga and wanted to be entertaining people. Anime artist / game designer. I wouldn't listen too much in school. I would always just like draw in class. But I went to a competitive high school where like a lot of the kids and teachers were like, be a doctor, engineer, lawyer. So I came into college as a bioengineering major on a pre-med track, being an aspiring neurosurgeon with the MD PhD. So that was my goal at the beginning of college, interested in neurosurgery, bioengineering, medicine. However, a little bit before college, I also was an avid cross country and track runner. I've so that's how I got into social media and blogging. I had this running blog that I guess had as a side hustle. So the green is like my side hustle, the red is like my main career journey. So I had this social media blog on the side called I Run Grace Pace, just for fun, while being pre-med and everything as well. And after kind of 2 years of being pre-med, I worked in research lab, intern at hospitals, got to kind of get a feel of how like being a researcher or a doctor is like. I decided that wasn't the path I wanted to take. And I decided to pursue computer science and game design. And I made VR games as this virtual reality lab opened up my school. I'm also currently in school for computer science and engineering. And because I was always trying to figure out like what I want to do, I thought of doing software engineering or game design, but later landing into UI UX design. I love UI UX design because it kind of incorporates a lot of my interests. If you're really into storytelling, visual design, solving problems, then UI UX design is definitely a great career path because you do a lot of different things that relate to storytelling, visual design, and problem solving through design. Kind of like along the way in college, I started Candy Leaf Design, which is my art business, and along my way of my self-teaching journey, I started Design Buddies back in April, and it kind of just like been viral through that as well. So it's been super fun. And so now we'll go a bit more detail into my experiences and the lessons I've learned. So this is kind of like towards this path towards UI UX design on my timeline. I started learning design for the first time. Also, like, feel free to chat in the chat how many of you guys are interested in potentially exploring a career in UI UX design, because when I was in high school, I had no idea what design was. I thought I had to be doctor, engineer, lawyer, or art or fine artist. I didn't know there was something in tech where I can do design. I graduated high school in 2015, so things have definitely changed since then. But I realized UI UX design after I graduated from my undergrad in 2019. So after I graduated my undergrad, I started my grad school. And in the beginning, I learned design for the first time through taking this class called Students Who Design. I've learned the fundamentals, did a bunch of hackathons along the way too. And then I was involved in startups and freelance because I was also I wanted to get an internship, but I was kind of struggling with that because I was new to design, didn't really have too many connections in the industry. So I worked at Opal and virtually, which actually got into YC, which is pretty cool. And I learned, and also like right now, I kind of made my way into EA as a UX design intern, and working at a large company / small company, there's a lot of differences. Even as a designer, the work I'm doing is pretty similar, but also like really different in different ways. So I'll be talking through that as well. And so I feel like for me, my biggest struggle with learning UI UX design is how to get started, because there's so much information on the internet that so many people have like compilations of resources, so many communities. It's easy to feel lost and overwhelmed and where exactly to start. But from my personal experience without a design degree, being able to work on a lot of different projects and getting these opportunities and building a portfolio, it really just comes down to understanding design thinking fundamentals and practicing them. And just like doing more practice. I feel like the main thing I see a lot of new designers do is they spend so much time reading and just like act like passively taking in information but not really acting upon them. But I feel like for me, practicing, doing hackathons, joining startups is what helped me the most in growing in my field and in my career as a designer. And this is what I learned from, I took Student to Design. So this is like the main course that really taught me how to do design, and it was free. And that basically changed the whole direction of my career. I'm not sponsored by them, but I just took this class that really helped me learn design and really just figured out how to like really navigate through all these resources online. And so, and also Students Who Design walked me through an actual project. And on top, if you're thinking of learning design, you want to choose a course that will walk you through an actual project as well. So you want to be able to like practice what you learn right away, because design's all about like practice, implementing things, design thinking through problems. So I've done this project called we all like had an app to do, and we choose an app, we found pain points, and we laid a design solution for that. So my app was Discord. So I designed a Discord bookmarks. Feel free to drop in a chat if you also like Discord and whether you prefer Discord or Slack. And so next thing is after I learned design for the first time, before I was felt like I was qualified to take on any like startup or any company roles. I decided to do a lot of hackathon projects because it was like a low barrier of entry to help me get my foot in the door and just get practice. Awesome. Yeah, I love Discord. I Design Buddies is on Discord, and I chose Discord. There's a lot of reasons why I chose Discord over Slack, but yeah, I'm so glad I see y'all loving Discord. I love Discord as well. I also love Slack for work. I feel like they all have their own times and places for everything too. But yeah, so I did a lot of hackathons and projects. I've done because it was like easy for me to get in without any experience compared to like a startup or freelance role or industry like EA. Um, Hackathons are a great way to really practice design thinking with a time crunch and really practice working with other people on the team. Like oftentimes, like in my design team at EA, I've also worked with product managers and engineers and other designers, and collaboration and design thinking solving problems are like two of the big key things you'll be doing every day as a UX designer. And just basically thinking through problems, working as a team, learning how to communicate the best, like your way of communicating, your way of delegating tasks, and resolving conflict, because that's a big thing that comes up during interviews. Also really useful to have and be able to like be ready for the situations when it's low stakes during a hackathon so far. So hackathons are a really great way to like practice being like a beginner or like a mini UX designer. And sometimes like doing practice is good, but sometimes the hardest part is about thinking about like what exactly you want to design, like the prompt. So hackathons, they kind of help you because you're paired with a team to help you come up with the prompt, or they come with the prompt itself to help you define a solution, to have a clear goal of your product. So you don't get stuck on thinking like, oh, what you want to work on, because there's so many things you could potentially work on. Also a great way to network. I met a lot of friends, like lifelong friends through hackathons. When I used to go to the real life ones, I would stay awake all 24 hours and just have like really deep life conversations and just like make friends that way. So it's always really fun to do hackathons as well. And top of just like professional development, developing my design skills, developing my teamwork skills, communication skills. And these are skills I carry on every day to my everyday work at EA and my work at startups too. And so for startups, I worked at Opal, and Opal is a startup started by some of my friends from school. And startups is more longer term projects compared to hackathons. Hackathons are generally, it can range from 24 hours to 3 weeks to a month long. I was even involved in a 12-week long hackathon. So these all depend on what you're looking for. Sometimes startup ideas do come from hackathons. Sometimes they don't. Most of the times they don't, but it's always taking a chance every time you get a hackathon. You might meet some people, it might be like your co-founders of like some multi-billion-dollar company. So you never know. But it's like you always want to take a chance. That's what I usually see as hackathons. And yeah. And so startups, they're definitely more longer term projects and hackathons, and you have a team of more variety of people. Like hackathons typically they're limited to like 3 or 4 people per team. So you want to balance it out by like design, engineer, product management, usually 2 engineers, like front end, back end, product management, and design. But for a startup, you can also have like analysts, finance, human resources, marketing on top of that as well. So it's a great way to learn how to collaborate with different types of people you'll also run into in a company setting as well. And Opal is a mentor-mentee matching app that I worked on. And my role as a product designer is to work with product managers, because startups, it's like a smaller company. So as a designer, you definitely get more say in a product. Like your idea will come to life even faster compared to EA, where there's a lot of levels of hierarchy and decisions making like that. I've also got to make some product decisions as well with product managers. I work with other designers and front end engineers to implement my design. And there's a shorter time from idea, like you get more power, you get more ownership of the product, because not ownership, but you get more like involvement in or kind of like determining the final idea. Definitely legible in product decisions. However, there's like a lot of pros and cons to working in a startup versus large companies like EA. EA is definitely more mentorship and more opportunities for mentorship and opportunities to work on different types of products. I can like work in IT, I can work in games. So lots of pros and cons to consider when you're deciding whether you want to work at kind of like long-term startups or large companies as a UX designer. And these are just some of the example screens I made at Opal. And next, I also got some experience before landing my role at EA in freelance work. I mostly got my freelance work by just posting work online and people reaching out to me or people introducing me to them. So I work with Virtually, which actually got into YC. They're an online creator school, and I've learned to really work with clients. This is kind of similar skill I use at EA and like my startups experience is like work with clients, and my client is actually CEO of Virtually, and I just like want to align to the client's goals, but sometimes the client doesn't have a design background, so they could say something like, "Oh, I want this color on top of this color. I want this text to be that color." But your job as a designer is to make sure that the text can be accessible, it's enough contrast, so it can be used by people with color blindness and just like things like that. So as a freelancer, you really want to advocate for design because you're not always working with designers, you're working with clients who come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And another really important thing when doing freelance work or art commissions or any type of paid work or any work for anybody on the internet is to really value your work and price your work, making sure that you have a contract and people pay, you get paid for your work. Because I've been in a situation in the past, mistakes I made was not negotiating the pay early on. So I always make sure to do that. And you can find work in different ways. I personally just share my work on social media and I get a lot of leads from that. But people also use like websites like TopTal or Fiverr. I personally never use them, but I see these a lot when discussing with freelancers. So they're just some resources you can use as well. Or I like to post on like Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn and Facebook groups, and that's where I get all my clients from like UX design to like illustration and kind of learn from there. And also depending design decisions also really I guess like plays a big role in my everyday life as a UX designer because I typically have to this is just like justify like why this design makes sense to people with a non-design background. So usually with like product managers, software engineers, first I need to clearly define like business and user experience goals and define the project goals, not design, and kind of go from there. And this is the some examples of screen I made for Virtually when I work with the client and kind of structure my information architecture so it aligns to the goals and everything too. And so now I'll talk a little bit about my internship. I'm doing a summer and fall internship, and I work on the experience design team. And throughout my time in the summer, it was 100% remote. I had 4 projects and 1 main project, and I worked on player and employee experience. And so my team has about 12 UX and product designers. Usually, like at EA, they use UX and product design pretty interchangeably. So they definitely like UX and product. It's very similar. UX design intern, product design intern, they do pretty similar work. Product design intern has more say in like the product thinking side, so they're more full stack. But UX design is more like user experience, but they all do very similar work and have very similar backgrounds. And my team works on a lot of player and employee experience. At EA, there's kind of like 3 different departments you can work in. You can work in game development, so which is all the games. You can work in information technology, which is all the products supporting the games. So that's where I work in. And then you can work in marketing team. So I'm a designer on the IT space. So I worked on projects like redesigning the whole EA Help homepage, working on design systems to complement that, working on branding and marketing for the virtual intern fair, and also redesign the employee internet system. And EA Help was like my main one. That I got to present an intern fair and everything. And yeah, overall it was great experience. Working on real world products and collaborating with a lot of like product managers, software engineers, and I've definitely gained a lot of these skills through working at hackathons and through startups and working with clients doing freelance work, which helps in my life in EA, like my day in life as a designer at EA. And so typical week, every day is definitely quite different. It really depends on what project I'm working on and how the deadlines are and how deadlines change and how different priorities change. But in a week, we would typically have one whole team all hands meeting, and this is just with my design team. with the UX designers, user researchers, copywriters, and senior managers, and the director who leads everything. Usually we'll discuss like announcements. Sometimes we have guest speakers, we'll give kudos, we share resources. So it's kind of like a team check-in for like an hour long. And then we also have a team critique meeting where anyone on the team can sign up to get any of the work critiqued by the whole team. So there's not really any formal structure, just if anyone wants to sign up, they will be able to get the work feedback through everyone. We also have a team happy hour. Everything's all virtual. So every day, like on Friday, we would have like a Zoom session where we play games or just like play with Snapchat filters and just have fun and get to know each other more. And then I'll have one-on-ones with my manager and mentor depending on how things are going. So I need to check in like halfway through my internship, performance review, or just with my mentor, like how the project's going, if I need more help, if I need more guidance, or I need direct feedback right away. And also, like, I didn't mention this, but oftentimes, like in a remote setting, I would also like DM people, and sometimes people want to like Zoom right away. So not all the meetings have to be scheduled. It could just be like virtually walking to someone's desk, but doing that in real life. So sending them a Zoom link, it's that like virtual, like physical equivalent of going to someone's desk and asking them for questions on Slack. So there's that. I also have meetings with product management and engineering teams to determine like scope of project, making sure everything is aligned, because these are also stakeholders and teammates involved in bringing your design to life. And then I also have intern events and employee resource group. That's what ERG stands for. So these are just like guest speakers or just like meetups within people in the company. So this is actually a great way to network within the company itself. So let's say that your internship ends in 12 weeks. If you want, and your team does not have funding to continue, if you networked outside the company, you might land yourself another position, another opportunity, if you get to know other people in the company as well. So this is why, like, that's how I was able to like negotiate myself having a fall internship, because I've also like networked outside. Even though I'm staying with the same team, I also like talk to different teams as well, just to know what they're doing. It's also good and interesting to learn, but also potentially get more opportunities when you network within the company in case you want to jump around teams, if you want to find new projects. And people are typically totally understanding if you want to switch teams and just work on different projects for your own career growth. So that's kind of like my favorite part about working at a large company, is that you can always jump around different projects pretty easily, versus startup, you're kind of just not stuck, but like responsible for like a big part of one project. But you also get a lot of say in that project in the startup. For a large company, you can jump around projects. There's always like mentorship opportunities, resources, and opportunities to do different projects. So there's not really like better or worse one. It just really depends on what you want to get out of your career. If you want to think about like startups versus large companies. And overall, I learned a lot of lessons while interning at EA. This is like my first ever design internship coming from a medicine and engineering background. I learned to really keep asking why, to making sure that I'm designing the correct features, and always just question everything, making sure every single design decision relates back to the problem I'm solving. And this also helps in defining design decisions and convincing stakeholders to implement your design and your team to agree on your design. Also designing for scalability. Think about how this element will scale long term, or like how this page will look like if like another row of games will be added, just like things like that I had to think about. And how would this page look like if it's in another language? I'll think of different use cases for that. As a UX designer, you often have to think about all these different cases and making sure your design fulfills all these different edge cases when you later scale that project too. It's like different countries, different languages. So all of these little things you had to think about, and you usually get these insights to like user interviews and everything as well. And also as an intern, sometimes project deadlines will get shifted. There was like a week where I didn't really have any deadlines specifically, so I would just like ask people on my team like how I can help out. So that's how I got other opportunities to do other projects, and get more experience that way as well. So that's how we're able to identify more opportunities, just by asking people how I can help out. And I also like document what I'm doing every day, what I accomplished, my meeting notes, which also helps you negotiate in the long term. You can bring up this evidence like, hey, I accomplished this at this time. Could be, I also have another offer here. Could be like negotiate, or is there like, what's your compensation? So this also like helps you a lot, not only like for your learning, but also in the future, you want to negotiate salaries too in the long term. And also communication is also definitely really important. Like people, like especially in a remote setting, I always like whenever I finish a meeting with like my mentor, manager, with or with other stakeholders, I always repeat like, oh, so I will now do this. Just to like repeat the instruction back to them, so it confirms your understanding. Just to make sure everyone understands and like both sides, and also shows that you're listening, which is also good. I also like to anticipate questions. Is it like a skill that you can use like once you get more experience to kind of really stand out and reach out, network within the company to identify other opportunities if you want, and learn about what other people do as well and how that relates to your overall project, which also helps in product thinking. And so there's a lot of places in design where you can be a UX or product designer or even artist. There's different, so that I talked about events like project jams, hackathons, design jams, and startups, you get more decision power. That's like the good part of it, but the bad part is like you're responsible for a lot more, but that could be like a good or bad thing. You're responsible a lot more, so you can't really hop around different projects too much. And you can also work in medium and large companies like EA. You have more resources, more mentors, and more opportunities to work on different types of projects, but less ownership of the product and more this leadership hierarchy. So like at EA, for example, I was going to launch the EA Help homepage, but then FIFA 21 came out, so all the engineering efforts came to that project instead of EA Help. So that's how like things shift back and forth at large companies. And you can also be independent. You can be a freelancer where you can like work with clients and be your own boss, basically be your own business. And you can also work for a design agency where you have corporate clients you can work with, or you start your own company as an entrepreneur. And so now I'll be kind of talking about how product development works, because as a designer, you'll often be working a lot with the product team. You'll be sometimes taking more product decisions and playing a lot of role in how the product will eventually look like, because you'll be responsible for the overall look and feel of the whole product. So it's really important to develop a really deep understanding of the product itself to make the design to complement the problem the product is trying to solve. And so this is a product life cycle. It's similar to the design thinking cycle, where you start up with like a concept, requirements, design, you kind of like make it to life, bring it to life, keep testing it, and keep repeating over and over again. And so like usually when you work with designers, you want to create a minimal viable product first, and just to kind of test things out. Because as a designer, the mistake I've made in the beginning, the mistake I see a lot of people making in the beginning, is that they would go straight to the high fidelity version. They would just like kind of jump to the conclusions. But really, as a designer, like the biggest tip is to start small, start with the basics, and kind of go from there as well. So you can like test it out, release it fast, and collect metrics, so you know how to improve upon that. And also like on a team, like usually on my roles, I've always like worked with like product management, where scope out the scope and roadmap. Design, I work with other designers to kind of ensure like consistency within the whole app. And I work with engineers to make sure this design is actually feasible. I also work with business to help align the business goals and develop a greater understanding of the product. So I typically work with a lot of these different types of disciplines. So it's, as a designer, it's also really important and really helpful to know a little bit about what each of these business, or each of these each of these different disciplines do, to help understand where they're coming from and where their decisions are coming from as designers, so I can work with them to bring a product to life. It's all about teamwork. And so the example of the product I will kind of be going through Design Buddies, it's how I like structure a product thinking, combining my UX design skills to develop the product. And Design Buddies is a little community I created that kind of went a little viral. And I created it because I just wanted to create a space for anyone to connect, because I feel like I fit into other design communities, and we have a lot of like resources, virtual events. And so we start with a problem. So as a designer, when you're starting with any project, you definitely want to start with a problem, some kind of frame of context you're starting with. So the problem I was facing before I started Design Buddies was that I felt like there's no inclusive space online where I could talk about design without feeling judged. In fact, when I was just starting out, I was in other design communities. I felt like I was being shunned for not being a design major or not being in the boot camp, and I just didn't feel like it was very constructive. I was also trying to apply to design internships. I was applying to large companies and I was ghosted by them because I didn't have any connections. So my problem was not feeling included, also not having connections to get ghosted by companies. So that kind of inspired Design Buddies. And so Design Buddies grew because all people just like resonated with that problem. Like a lot of times people will come to design from like different backgrounds without studying it, but also if you're like it's like really hard to start because there's no community behind that or no place where they can really ask for questions. They also made up come from like different background where they don't have connections, so Design Buddies aims to connect them as well. So I just started with two problems I had that turned out to be problems other people had too. And so we also follow like a product cycle, which also kind of falls in hand with the design thinking cycle. So this cycle is similar to like what UX designers do is we really start up with research. We work with sometimes user researchers, so we do research ourselves. So we do a lot of user market research. And then we kind of identify like market gaps and ideate solutions from that, kind of like aligning to the problems we find through our research. So for my research, I survey people a lot in Design Buddies, and I ask a lot of questions about what they want to see, what they're struggling with, and what kind of tools that could be helpful as a beginner or like any demographic starting out. I also joined a lot of different design communities online to do my market research to see what's working, what's there, what's not there, and seeing what makes people engaged and taking inspiration from that and bringing them to Design Buddies. So I'm always aware of like what's happening outside and what's happening inside to help design like what solutions I want to do. So we recently launched our mentorship program and our book club and more events kind of geared towards all of the feedback that we've heard from people from all sorts of places. And then later when we launch it, we'll like kind of test it out by collecting metrics and seeing how people react to it, how they like it, dislike it. And then we later take those metrics to keep improving our product. And so this is a little branding. We like kind of took and we're actually redesigning our website, but this is our first website launch in July. We have a playful tone because most of us are students, but over the months, we have accumulated a lot of different professionals as well. So we have we're redesigning it, but originally our target audience mostly students, so it's more playful and everything as well. And we have like a 3D look, and yeah, so this is our MVP. We just have one page. We're call to action who can join us and inquires for partnership. And so as a designer, I always work with projects, so I learned a lot from building products as a designer. And mostly like goal setting, it's really important to working team and have vision, like have a mission and making sure the long-term and short-term goals are aligned. And also picking markets because your goal is to pick a target demographic and develop a solution for that. Because you can't, if you try to satisfy everybody, you won't satisfy anybody in return because you try to fill so many needs that you'll be missing so many. So really determining and understanding the target demographic as a designer is also really important when deciding your designs, like deciding like what features you want, what flows to do, what interactions, what colors. It all depends on who the customer, who the user is that you're designing for. And also raising capital is another skill that I've learned throughout the way. And building teams, kind of like identifying skills needed for success. So I basically manage a team of 10 different admins and Design Buddies. We all have different roles like social media manager, community manager, design leads, content creators. So I've always just tried to like identify people's strengths and weaknesses and place them accordingly. And also goal of a leader is just basically motivate the team towards a common goal, not micromanaging, but just like there just to answer any questions, to be supportive and let people kind of contribute as well. Also adapting to change, like there's always going to be new trends, new customer needs, new technologies, potentially more opportunities. So just making sure you're paying attention to your surroundings, and like also like modifying your project and pricing to boost growth. Let's say your competitor comes up with cheaper product and you definitely want to modify your pricing. And so now I'll be going over some of the free resources.
Okay.
So for free resources, I have some compilations that I've found online, which are pretty helpful. You're welcome to like take any screenshots if you want. But these are just like compilations of design resources. These can be like ranging from like software to podcasts to books to communities. So definitely check these out. These are all free. Most of them are free. These are just like compilations of design resources. So they're like these are like lists, a list of lists. So make sure you check these out. These are really helpful. And so events and groups are a great way to like further expand your knowledge and network with other designers. Like Discord, there's like design buddies, you totally join. Slack, there's Hexagon, UX, and Friends of Figma that I found helpful. Facebook, I really like this group called Asian Creative Network. Meetup, there's another meetup group called UX Wizards. And so the tools I used are like Miro for brainstorming, Figma, design prototyping. A lot of these things can technically be done in Figma. Brainstorming can also be done in Figma, but Miro is also the good one because sometimes developers and product managers are not too familiar with Figma. So these are some tools as a UX designer. It's good to like get a general understanding of. There's like a lot of tools out there, but those tools are basically variations of these tools. So once you mastered like each of these tools, it will be easier to understand other tools that are out there. So usually when I'm beginning a project, I would definitely have a problem and brainstorm solutions on Miro that way. And then later I'll go into Figma to the actual design and prototyping. And then for my user testing to really measure success on my design, to test things out and release it to the public, and to do testing, to later iterate upon that, I'll use Marvel, which is a remote user testing tool. You can send to people, so you don't have to schedule like one-on-ones with people to do user testing. And then you can also have Notion or Notes. I prefer Notion over Google Drive just because things can be more organized. Google Drive, everything seems to be really nested upon each other. Notion's a bit more that I love Notion as well. Notion's amazing. And Discord, or team communication, I had Discord, not Slack. But yeah, feel free to chime in and chat if any of you guys use these apps as well, and which app is your favorite. Yeah, Notion's great. I use Notion. I like basically have my whole life on Notion. And if you're a student, I'm not sponsored by Notion, but you can get the pro plan, or I think the personal pro plan for free with an EDU email. So you can unlimited data points. Yeah. So yeah, that concludes like the content of presentation. Feel free to connect with me on any of my social media platforms, join Design Buddies, and let me know if you have any questions in the chat. I'll post a link to join Design Buddies in case you guys want to join. Most helpful tip I have with networking. Yes. So networking is interesting. Networking, essentially, I got my internship at EA without applying. It was actually through networking. So networking I think of is, it's like making a new friend. It's a two-way street. Like what made me really scared of networking at first is like, oh, it seems like really transactional. Like I feel like I like talking to someone, they're like so different. I feel like everything has to be so business oriented. But I feel like for me, it just kind of boils down to making a new friend. And for networking, it could be with different purposes. I network for partners or design buddies. I network for jobs, but I think the jobs portion is more useful for you all. So in my strategy of getting internship at EA through networking was that I sent 400 connection requests on LinkedIn, and I basically searched a bunch of UX design directors, senior managers, and sent this message saying, hello, I'm Grace. I give some context. So I'm computer science engineering student looking to work towards a career in UX and product design. Would love to learn about how you got to where you are today. So I often start off with just scheduling a meeting with them, learning about their stories and relating to them, asking them questions, what they learned along the way. And I would never ask for a job because that can be pretty off-putting, and people are not likely to refer you if they never worked with you before because they're advocating for you in the company. And then kind of just like let the conversation flow naturally. And sometimes they will ask about me and like what I'm looking for. So that's how I met my current manager right now, through networking on EA, through sending cold DMs on LinkedIn. And also I always make sure to ask at the end how I can help out as well, because networking is a two-way street. you shouldn't just be taking from someone. You should also just like ask if you can help out. You might be surprised. For me, I felt like I couldn't really like ask people for help or ask like how I can help someone, but you'll be surprised. Like sometimes they want feedback and stuff, but the fact that you ask puts you ahead of a lot of different people, because you're not seeing this as something transactional, but you're seeing this as a two-way street, which helps them remember you. So I guess helpful tip is to treat it like a friend, and also ask how you can help out as well, so people are more receptive to making a long-term connection. So Dylan asks, any favorite hackathons? You seem to have attended all of them. Yeah, I have attended all of them. So yeah, it really depends. I like the design. So there's different types of hackathons. They're called I general term hackathons, but hackathons can be like creating like a digital product, or it could be like a design challenge where you come up with a prototype. So there's no coding involved. And I like design challenges because they're fun and I don't have to worry about feasibility and how this would actually be implemented. I can kind of go like all crazy and think of different ideas I can have. So I like those. But I definitely like the real life ones are really nice because I feel like the spirit is there. Everyone's in the same room. So it feels like more motivating. And a remote hackathon's a bit harder because everyone's remote. You don't really know what everyone's doing. And I typically don't have time to like do for the whole day. So I really like the there's like ones like Protothon was pretty fun. So like some colleges, they host a lot of like design challenges for design clubs. So I like those. Those are generally smaller competitions, less tight. I also like the real life ones, like Hack for Humanity at Santa Clara University at my school was also fun. It also won first place. That's why I liked it a lot. Yeah, so I think like there's a lot. I generally like the ones where you don't have to code. You can like make a prototype and submit that. Yeah. Also, another private question. What has been your experience with coding? Did the coding skills that you learned as an engineering student differ from the skills you acquired as a designer? How difficult managing these design buddies? Yeah, okay, so that's two questions. So my experience with coding is interesting. So I was a bioengineering major in undergrad, and I minored in computer science and engineering. I first time my 2 years, I added my minor in my junior year of college. So before then, I didn't know how to code at all. I took like a beginner Java course like in high school, but like I didn't remember anything. I don't think that really counts. So I just didn't remember anything. And so that kind of scared me away from coding, to be honest. Just like as a high schooler, like I thought it was like really hard. So I stopped doing that and started doing pre-med. And then I started just like got into game design. I realized in games, like if I want my design to come to life, I will have to code. So that's why I like I tried learning coding by myself. It was just really hard. So I took a class to learn the fundamentals. So I took on a minor at my school, and I kind of like really have an actual understanding of how to code. So most of my experience coding is mostly for making games. So in school I learned how to use C, code in C, and then for games I learned how to code in C# because I usually use Unity. And in my internship last summer, I actually interned at Intuitive Surgical as a virtual reality robotic surgery game developer intern. And at my internship, it was mostly software engineering. I mostly just like coded my game in Unity, using C#. So that's been my experience. And at school, I also still use C to complete my assignments. I don't code that much these days because I just like do school and do my assignments. But this quarter, I'm doing like a front end development class. So I'll be going more in depth into HTML, CSS, JavaScript because that kind of ties back into UX design. As a UX designer, the biggest misconception is that you have to code, but that's not true. You don't have to learn how to code for UX design. You can just go to where you'll be working with software engineers, but it's good to like know the basics of front end, kind of like basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and how components work and how design systems work, and how like have a systems thinking approach and breaking the designs down so a developer can understand it. So yeah, so I guess like as designer, there's not that many. It's not mandatory to know how to code, but it is a bonus if you do know like the basics of front end development, and that's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so you can work with the engineers and design and like set up your design systems in Figma to really make sure that it's implementable by those code languages. And manage a community as large as Design Buddies. Yeah, great question. It's been super interesting. It grew more than my expectations. It continues to grow at an even faster pace. So in 5 months, we had 7,200 members join. And for me, it's really having a team of admins who help me moderate the community and help ban people who cause problems. So that's how I managed, just having a team of admins and having a team of active members who just watch out for me. Like they just like report people who may be causing problems, bring them to me, because we have 3,000 to 4,000. Oh, nice, Jennifer, 7,000. That's amazing. Yeah, that's cool. I'm drink some water. My throat's kind of dry. Yeah, so definitely a magic community Design Buddies. Yeah, I just saw another question. Yeah, so definitely just like having a team of people to just help out, like having a team of like admins who moderate the chat, and having a team of, not team, but like having a focus group, or having like a team of common users who point out different problems or bring things to my attention, because there can be up to like 4,000 messages, 3 to 4,000 messages a day in Design Buddies, and I do not read all of it, and I rely on my helpers. So that's how I manage that community. And also, I'm always like lurking and watching for feedback and acting upon them, and making changes, improvements based on the feedback I see. So it's a combination of a lot of helpers helping me out, delegation of tasks, and listening to seeing what feedback needs to be implemented to satisfy like what the community wants and needs. And yeah. Oh, where do I go to school? I go to school at Santa Clara University in California. I went to undergrad and grad in I did my undergrad and doing my grad degree. I'm from San Jose, California originally. So I just stayed local. It's a small private school, but I learned a lot, and it was like cool because I had small classes. So like I got to know my professors pretty well, and that was pretty nice. Yeah, another question is, what is your favorite project you ever worked on as a UX design? Yeah, great question. I really liked my experience at EA, and honestly, Design Buddies is my favorite project I ever worked on, because it just has like so much like impact and so much reach, and I just been getting a lot of like opportunities for like jobs, freelance work, and I've done like over 40 speaking events from Design Buddies since June. So that's my favorite, just because it has so much impact in people's lives, and every day I get so many messages of people that I'm so super grateful of, that just like tell me how much Design Buddies have impacted their life and helped them feel less lost in the career, because I was exactly in their shoes just a few months ago, like feeling lost in my career. So it's like really awesome to see how Design Buddies has shaped them. So that's my favorite project, and it's my favorite project because it had so much impact on people. Oh, Serena asked, how do you learn how to code? At first in high school, I took a Java course in a community college, but it was honestly really hard and really abstract, because that course was for college students. It was just over the summer, just a summer class learning Java. But I feel like that my struggle about that was that I was just learning just to learn. I didn't really have anything I want to make. And my biggest tip when learning something new is that you want to have like a project you want to make. Like I want to do design because I had ideas I want to do, and I want to learn how to code because once I like had an idea, it helped learning how to code a lot easier, because I can tie in the concepts I was learning to an actual project and how all the systems relate to each other, rather than just like learning concepts and everything like that. So I first learned Java, and I kind of like took closed off coding for a few years to pursue pre-med, and then I kind of went back into coding because I wanted to learn how to make a game, and my experience in VR helped me want to learn how to code, so I could make games. So that's where it came from, and I learned with a combination of YouTube tutorials and sitting and taking classes at my school with my minor, and yeah, so like a lot of lab classes, a lot of academic classes, and also a lot of like practicing outside and looking at tutorials, because like as a CS student, a lot of the skill comes from practice. You can't just like go to a lecture and listen and do tests. Like to actually get a job as like in software engineering, like people oftentimes do a lot of practice outside, rather to like personal projects, hackathons, leak code. So yeah, so I guess that's a long-winded answer, but essentially learn how to code with a combination of classes, YouTube tutorials, looking at other resources, and working on projects.
All right, if there are no other questions, then thank you so much, Grace, for sharing your experience today and answering all of our questions. And we will also be posting the recording of this workshop on our YouTube channel and sending it out to all of you. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thank you guys and have a great week.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.